really never did anything that extreme with watercolor pencils. I found out about these new Distress watercolor pencils, and when I saw where they come from, I got really excited about making a video. But now that I've tried them, I need to show you something that I was not expecting at all before filming. So first we'll run a quick test and swatch those pencils, and then I'll take you with me inside my painting process, and I can tell you I have never experienced anything like it before. These watercolor pencils are really special, and that is because they come from the scrapbooking world, and I found out about them by accident on YouTube. I was familiar with scrapbooking because I used to be a huge fan, and I have a bunch of 15-year-old Tim Holtz Distress inks from the same brand as these pencils, Ranger. I know the brand and inks are awesome, so naturally I needed to try this, especially now I've become an artist and a fan of watercolor pencils. You'll find 3 sets with different colors. I wasn't sure which one to get, so I went with set 3. And I haven't seen the sets on Amazon yet, but I see they're priced $24.99 on the Ranger website. And I got my set for the exact same price in euros from Crafterier. Ranger calls these distress watercolor pencils as in their distress types of inks that they sell for scrapbooking. And the distress inks give a weathered look to papers, so it would make sense those pencils achieve the same look. On the website and package, Ranger claims the pencils are woodless, water-soluble pencils. They're formulated to achieve vibrant coloring effects on porous surfaces. The solid water reactive pigments are ideal for watercoloring, shading, sketching, and more. Color directly onto surface and blend them with water. Layer with distress ink, oxide, sprays, or paint for more possibilities. Coordinate with the Distress palette of products. So how do they compare to watercolor pencils? And this is where it gets more interesting. At first sight, they look more like water-soluble oil pastels because they're woodless, and the texture also looks like pastel, when a standard watercolor pencil really looks like any colored pencil. The lead seems like it's just more dry and hard than a normal pencil. For these Ranger kind, only the shape so far makes it a pencil, and if it can turn into watercolor, then I get why they're labeled as watercolor pencils, so I don't really see it as a problem at all, but I thought I should mention that. What really matters, I think, is to see if they blend well, because if you use watercolor pencils, you'll know we can often see pencil lines showing when trying to blend, unless you use my tips, and that's in the watercolor pencil playlist I'll add to the description of this video and that I recommend you to watch after this. The tip is not too sharp, but we can fix that, and it's working really well. The tip isn't breaking, which is a good sign. In case you didn't know, when you sharpen such pencils or even water-soluble oil pastels, you can keep the shavings in one place and activate them with water separately if you're afraid to waste any other pencil. That's something I find is even easier to do than with the standard watercolor pencils since there's no wood. I press hard and I make messy lines to see if they pass the blending test. Good surprise here, they blend perfectly well, which is a huge plus. And I confirmed that they feel more like a watercolor oil pastel to me than the standard watercolor pencils when I actually color. Another thing you want to look for in a watercolor pencil is the vibrancy of colors, so let's swatch them and see how they turn out. The coloring feels easy and agreeable. If you're watching this from a scrapbooking fan's perspective, be aware I'm using good watercolor paper, which is really going to help our results whenever we use a product that requires water. Okay, so the colors look a lot brighter and more of your regular colors than what I expected, honestly. To me, the Ranger Distress line is all about an aged look, so here I'm a bit disappointed. For instance, I own the Derwent graphite tints that give more of an aged look because there's graphite in them and you can really see the difference. It still seems like a good quality to work with. The colors are vibrant enough. What bothers me is in the set, there's no black or no very dark color. And so you know set 1 has black and set 2 has brown. So I imagine having all 3 sets would get us a good range of colors. I have a few tricks to hopefully fix that. For example, a nice thing about watercolor pencils is you can easily make new colors by blending two colors together. That's what I'm trying here, but so far it's not very dark, just a bit better. We might make something work, but I'm worried that I can't get shadows to look dark enough in my painting. We'll see how that goes next. This is the grand test on a full painting that will tell us whether or not those watercolor pencils are worth it. I'm recording this as I finish the painting and it's going to be interesting. Usually when I paint, I easily find a reference photo, but for this one it was tough because of the colors. I couldn't paint anything with very dark darks, and I also wanted to use reddish tones because that's why I picked the set over the other two. First, I used the swatch cards to pick all the colors I thought fit in my photo. With regular watercolors, I would limit myself to 3 or 5 colors, but with a small set like this, I think it's more fun to use more colors, and it's better to also show you how the set performs. I started with a base layer to isolate the kettle from the background so I can paint that later. So far so good, the pencils were easy to color with. I also knew they blend really well, so no problem there either. I took care to overlap different colors to get them to mix into darker tones and also to contribute to a more realistic look. When I blended the space layer, I was disappointed. You can see how bland the colors are looking. When you compare it with reference, it feels like this could take ages and a lot of layering to fix. And I did not notice the colors being so light when I did the swatches, but don't worry because I always have solutions for things like these. Normally I might have moved on, but I needed to make a point with these exciting watercolor pencils I really wanted to show you, so I kept digging. Something you can do with watercolor pencils, whenever the process takes ages or if the colors don't lay on paper easily, you can swatch colors on a scrap piece of paper and pick them up from there after activating them, to make them act more like normal watercolors. This was going to hopefully make my process faster and add quick vibrancy to my painting. You can see here it's much better, so this definitely works. However, if you know me, you know I'm all about light and shadows, and this light background wasn't going to cut it. And I can't stress enough how important shadows are when you want to paint realistically. You will see how later on. But anyways, I decided to move on to painting the kettle so there could be progress. I went for a reddish tone called Crackling Campfire, and guess what I found? This specific color feels a lot more opaque than the others I had applied before, and this might solve a big problem, and it made me happy at the time that I kept going. Another lesson that we learn but sometimes forget to be persistent. This vibrant red kettle by itself needed shadows as well, so out of desperation and wanting this painting to progress, I decided to add blue since it was one of the colors I was going to use originally on the kettle. And surprise here, combined to this vibrant red tone, we're starting to get what I would call a shadow color. I started adding those colors everywhere, with or without other ones, depending on the desired result. And I ran out of time because I have 4 kids to get from school every day, so I picked up where I left off the next day, feeling that I was going to be able to achieve a realistic look with this painting after all. Another problem, however. With watercolor pencils, you'll notice it's hard to layer more than twice in most cases. After a while, the surface of the paper feels slippery and the pigment can't stick to the tooth anymore. And despite the background and kettle looking good, I needed more. Do you remember earlier when I mentioned you can use the shavings from your pencil? Guess what? With our power couple of blue and red, using the shavings directly will give you the darkest, thickest, and most opaque mix I've seen yet from this set. Something worth trying with other watercolor pencils if you can scrape the lead with a cutter or something. I really never did anything that extreme with watercolor pencils. For my shadows to look good, I really wanted the bottom of the kettle to be that dark that you can't tell where it ends and where the table starts, like on the reference photo. I finished perfecting the shadows in the kettle and onto the part we don't want to miss. Type persistence wins in comments if you agree. I don't consider using white gouache for highlights cheating, as I always do it in all my paintings. But if I had purchased the first set, it would have been interesting to see how the white watercolor pencil performs. Although in my experience, they rarely do as well as gouache. I won't use these Distress watercolor pencils again, nor buy the other sets, because it was a long painting with many layers and the colors aren't as special as I thought, but overall, they're okay if you're not into realism as much as I am, and they blend really well. I have this video right there for you next to see how to blend all kinds of watercolor pencils well, even the cheap pencils for kids that leave pencil lines. I hope you enjoyed this watercolor pencil story, and I'll see you next time.